Good evening, LFC Transfer Room guests. Welcome to Tuesday night's Transfer Central. I'm your host. I'm joined today by the wonderful Dan and Brandon. Brandon, how are we?
I'm doing good. It's my last day of vacation, so I got to get back to work tomorrow. So it's I'm a little up and down today.
Have you got that holiday blues tonight?
Yeah, definitely. I'm like, just dreading going back to work, especially because I'm in like a new role at work. So it's like going right back into like the fire. So.
Oh, you'll smash it, man. Don't worry.
Oh, yeah.
You'll be absolutely brilliant.
Mhm.
And Dan, and how are you, man?
I'm doing good, Charlie. I think this will be my last stream with you because I actually start going back to work tomorrow morning, and I have Friday off and Monday off. But after that, I'm pretty much going to be at school teaching for the most part. So I don't know if I'll be able to hop on a stream, except for a post match stream every once in a while. But I'm doing good.
Right.
I'm doing good, mate. But how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good. As we've kind of discussed, the baby's due any moment now. So if my wife does go into labour, I might need to be called away, and we could have a bit of a live stream of the labour. I don't know how the wife would actually take that, but we'll see. You know, you can't.
That's fair. That's fair. We'd have to ask her. We'd have to ask her. I know my wife wants to hop on stream now, so we can ask her.
Yeah. Well, there's been an interesting one where I need to name the child after a transfer, the next transfer. So looking at the list of potential transfers, Wilfred Ndidi kind of sounds all right, doesn't it? Wilfred, I like it. Okay, right. So what we're going to do, I'm gonna call something out. What we're going to do at the end of this stream, we're going to call it extra time. We're going to actually ask you guys there in the chat for your questions. I know I'm really conscious about kind of incorporating, getting you guys involved. So what I'll do, if you save your questions for the end of the stream, we've got a number of topics. We'll just open the stream up, the chat up, and we'll just go through as many questions as possible. So we'll try something new, but I just really want to get you guys involved because you're, one big LFC family, and so yeah, let's see how that goes itself. So we'll kick off with the first topic of the day. It's kind of breaking news, not the news that we actually were kind of hoping for after the brilliant performance that we had on the weekend against Newcastle. Part of that match is that we saw Virgil van Dijk sent off for a questionable red card. It kind of is 50-50 in our own personal WhatsApp group whether it was a red card or not. We'll leave that for another topic. I'm sure that's been already discussed. But the thing that's come out today essentially is the additional charge for improper conduct, a little bit of bad mouthing essentially from Virgil. So what I'll do is, Brandon, I'm going to kick off with yourself, and we'll get your thoughts about what it all means. But there are just a few things I think we want to just talk about. So the additional charge, what's your kind of initial thoughts about that? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Is it kind of justified maybe what he was saying?
What he's saying, you're an effing joke, is basically kind of what is being rumored that he said to the ref.
There may have been a little bit more as well with the fourth official.
Yeah, so if he does, it's proper conduct and it's probably deserved. But at the same time, how many things are actually said during a football match that are never carried out like this? I think that's probably my biggest complaint, is that so many people have said far worse than that. Or, I mean, actually, we don't know what exactly he said, but how in the heat of the moment, what's said during a football match, and now if they continue to rule this way, I'd be fine with it. But if they're not going to, this is going to be a one-off where Virgil gets made the example of and nobody else does anything about it, then it's very frustrating. And, we've already had our, war of words with the officials over the past 2 seasons, like Paul Tierney obviously being the main target of it all. It just feels like now there's a target on Liverpool for everything. And I hate to be the guy that says all the refs are out to get us, but it's kind of feeling that way after the McAllister red card, the 50-50 red card with Virgil, and now Virgil getting something that you don't really see that often now, these kind of improper conduct things for, what he says in the heat of the moment.
Yeah. And Paul, you make a really, really good point. So Dan, I'll come to you. Let's have a look at this comment from Paul, which is quite interesting. It is absolutely correct. I'd say, you look at the last thing, especially being the captain. What are your thoughts about that? Should he be leading from example, being in the position that he is at the club?
I mean, yeah, in a hypothetical world, I think we would all want Virgil to obviously be the cool head and be the cool Virgil van Dijk he is. I think one that he's trying to act because he's now the new captain. He very much has a degree of responsibility, and he's also the captain of the Netherlands too. So this is not a new thing as well. I do agree that he shouldn't have done it. However, if we've said that, name any captain throughout history, I think they've all done something like this before. Gerrard, Carragher, oh God, Henderson did it. Bruno Fernandes is famous for doing it as well. If you go back to any captain at any team throughout history, even Paul Ince back in the 90s, was famous for being hard as nails. Roy Keane, any famous captain, Fernandinho, Vincent Kompany, in many ways. Obviously, yes, in a hypothetical world, Virgil van Dijk would not do this, but football's an emotional game. And I think at times that the expectation of referees is that they try to take so much emotion out of it, which in one sense is fine because you're an arbitrator of the sport. You're trying to be as unemotional as possible. I just feel like there's a lack of common sense from referees in many ways because, yes, the player should say this. However, in the rules, if a player calls you a goofy joke, it's a yellow card. It's for dissent. And I think that's usually how it is. For me, the biggest problem with this is three things. One, the FA and the Premier and the Refs Association uses as try to use this to make an example of Virgil van Dijk and try to use this as a standard, but it's not going to be a standard. They're going to do this. It's going to be called an overreach. They're going to see that they're wrong, and then going forward, you're not going to see this being called on either player again. Bruno Fernandes is a good example. Two, I don't think John Brooks tells Van Dijk why he been sent off. I went back and watched the game. He just sends him off. He says, "You're off." Virgil's like, "What are you talking about?" This idea that refs need respect. Part of the reason that I feel like they don't understand what respect is that if you tell a player, "Hey, you were the last man, I got to send you off," the player would be like, "I wasn't the last man." They can sit there and argue, but I feel like they have a greater understanding. But in that moment, in a high intense game like that one, the ref did not ref the occasion or ref the foul. They refed, "I'm the main man. I'm going to be drawing the big bollocks." The third issue I have with all of this as well is that, again, it's just that lack of communication. Where I feel like none of the refs are telling the players, "This is how I'm going to ref you. I'm going to let fouls go, but don't time waste." Because Trent Alexander-Arnold gets pushed in the back, should be a foul, should be a yellow card reported, not called. Trent throws the ball 5 yards, probably should throw the ball, but it's not really a yellow card offense. Ref gives a yellow card. And then, 2 minutes later, Trent has the arm across Gordon. Could have been a second yellow, could have been sent off. Referee's now in his head. Maybe I should have sent him off there. Now he sent Van Dijk off because I got to take control of the situation. Again, there's just this thing where we can talk about the players and them being imperfect. I think that's perfectly fine. But the refs need to be talked about that they're imperfect beings and arbitrators, and they need to accept that fact. And the refs need to just be like, "You know what? I'm not perfect. I didn't get this right. Let me explain my decision. Let me move on." And we can all live happier lives, and refs will be less stressed. They don't need to act like headmasters of the game and guardians of football and its sacredness, because no one goes to a game to watch Craig Paulson or Paul Tierney or Anthony Taylor, Manchester's finest, to ref a game. They go to watch the players. And the refs should be, at best, just arbitrators of the game, and that they're going to get decisions wrong.
Yeah,
I'm not guessing getting that one match ban. I just feel that they're going to try and make an example of him, and that's what I don't want to see.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we do think about the worst case scenario and the impact is, if it is a two-match ban on top of the the red that he got. So you're looking at 3 matches at the very most, you would say. So looking at the fixtures, we've got Aston Villa, obviously on the weekend, and then after the international break, we've got Wolves away and then West Ham at home. So is that I mean, it's not Manchester United, it's not Manchester City in those 3 games. So could we cope, Brandon, do you think?
I think so. Obviously, it's not ideal, but I think we would cope. Aston Villa, I did get to watch the other day. They look like a pretty solid team. Obviously, Emery is a very good coach, especially for that level. But I think we'd be able to cope 3 games without Virgil. It wouldn't ruin the season. So, well, hopefully. But, yeah, I think we'd be able to cope if it goes to 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, there's been talk, and we'll discuss, potential outgoings. But with the way that the guys performed on the weekend, talking about Gomez and talking about Matip and Kwanzaa when he came on, it does give you confidence that we could actually make do with what we have. And especially if the midfield suddenly, if we don't get red cards, we should be okay. The last 2 games we've seen red cards, so we need to try to improve on that stat straight away with what we're doing anyway. But what we'll do, because we're just pushed for time, we're going to be going through these topics really, really quickly. First thing I want to say is, and I'll just go back to the comment, is please just make sure you subscribe to the channel. We've got to 203, but if we can just up those likes, try to get up to 75 or 100 today, that'd be absolutely amazing. We'll give Brandon and Dan a really, really good send-off before the jobs kind of kick in and adulting commences. So
I will be here Friday for the transfer deadline stream for both streams.
No.
Actually. So they can't get rid of me that easily. I'll still be here for both. That'll be my
good. Yeah. You'll be back. You'll be back. You know it. Okay. So what we'll do, we'll move on to the next topic, and we'll be talking about a particular Leicester City player. So Wilfred Ndidi, 26, Leicester player, currently playing in the Championship. So, Dan, I'll go with you really quickly. Do you think this is a good or a bad signing? Is he the type of player that we should be going for at this late stage?
At this late stage, no. I mean, again, it just comes down to price because inexpediency. I feel like if they knew Leicester were getting relegated, I think all the way back in May, so they thought Ndidi was a realistic target and someone they wanted to buy, they would have done this already. I just don't think he has a very high release clause, and I think Leicester are looking for something like 40 million, 40 to 50. And for 40 to 50, you might as well just go and, save that for a Doucouré deal, save that for, other players we're going to look at and potentially sign over the next couple of days. I liked Wilfred Ndidi 2 to 3 years ago. I just think that Ndidi has hit his ceiling. And I think that 2 to 3 years ago, like that entire Leicester team kind of burned through its potential very easily. And I feel like he's just stagnated as a player. I think he'll go somewhere and he'll probably do just fine. But I think that the Ndidi train has left and that there are other players out there to go sign that are worth more money and are much better players for this team.
Yeah. So Brandon, there's a couple of contrasting views on here. So Mickey, you've come out and said that Ndidi's not good enough, whereas JC, you've come out and said Ndidi, please. So I guess there's different views around the type of player that he could be. Is he, again, something that we should be considering? Now, one thing I do want to throw out is AFCON. So he represents Nigeria, doesn't he? And Nigeria are a really, really good team, fantastically led, perform really well in AFCON. So they would be expected to kind of go deep into that competition. Now, with the number of fixtures that we have around the January time, does that worry you, trying to get a player in of that experience, but then we lose him for such a big period of the season itself?
Yeah, I'd be worried about that. Obviously, we lose Mo, and don't we lose Indo for a little bit too around that same time? Like
Asia Cup, isn't it? Yeah. So and that's an even bigger period, isn't it? I think. Yeah. 10 games supposedly he could be missing.
Yeah, like if we hadn't signed Indo, I'd be okay with getting Ndidi, but basically they'd be fulfilling the same role, like kind of a guy who can cover the central defensive and kind of sit back and center back if we need him to. Like, I'd feel like it's, especially at the price Dan quoted, like, no, not really. I think, I don't want to be mean. I feel like the people who want him in are just people who want bodies in at this point. Like, I just don't think it fits.
But is that valid, though? Is that actually something that we should be looking at, trying to get bodies into such a short squad? I know we're up to 24, and we've got one more non-homegrown spot for such a player. But with the number of players that we do have and the lack of depth, is that actually is that a good thing?
If the price is right, but I don't want to go, fulfilling, fill bodies out for $40 and $50 million a piece when, we, like as Dan said, we could use that to Doucouré or go get a Luiz from Benfica or something like that. It'd be much more better spent to go get those guys with much higher ceilings or, guys who can progress much more in this team. Like, it just filling out bodies at 50 million a pop, that's just not good business.
Yeah, and if you're going to spend 50 million, you want to at least know the player's going to be committed for a couple of years. If you're just spending 50 million on squad players, like that, you're essentially doing the Rafa Benitez thing of, I don't think this player's good enough to start. I'm going to spend 50 million on him. Like, that's not a sustainable transfer policy. I mean, just look at Chelsea, and I mean, even the only team I know that's ever tried to do this is Manchester City, and they don't even hold on to those players like beyond a year. Like, they spent all that money on Fernand Torres, and then he was out the door in like 6 months.
Yeah. So I mean, Jay's mentioned Basetic. So bringing in a player, so we've got Endo, we've got Basetic being now kind of recognised number 6. I'll probably argue that Basetic is actually number 8. But you know, if we do think of him as being that number 6 for us, would bringing in a player of Ndidi's experience, not very high ceiling compared to Basetic, do you think that actually hinders his game in what we're looking to achieve and what he could achieve with this team? Brandon, I'll open up to you first.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's kind of lost is like how much just bringing in, like, as kind of the point we were making, just bringing in bodies, like how much that could hinder, Bostic, like moving forward. Like, if we're going to cut his game time in getting these players who's considered squad players who, ceilings aren't as high, aren't like it's, I don't know. I just feel like it'd be better to move forward with just Bostic than go get Ndidi, especially at the price. So I feel like I'd much rather develop Bostic than go get Ndidi and limit Bostic's progression this year.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We have a player that has shown a very, very high ability at such a young age. Again, like Dan, what are your thoughts around bringing in such a player to kind of fill up the squad, which is great, but actually hinder some of our younger players?
I just think there's better options. Like, you can name so many better options than Wilfred Ndidi. And again, if you're going to spend that type of money, you want someone like, so for me, I don't think you need a game-changing DM to make this team good or a game-changing center back. Any just half-decent player I think will do. And, even someone like Cheick Doucoure, we mentioned like Cheick Doucoure is already, not to the player that Ndidi is. I think they're about the same standard, but he's 3 years younger and he can come in and again, do a job. For lack of a better term, he can come in and carry water. You can go and spend that money on a Ryan Gravenberch and a Cheick Doucoure. Ryan Gravenberch, people say, well, he's not 6. I'm like, I understand that, but I don't think they're looking for this superstar lone 6 in the way that Aurelien Tchouameni kind of is or was. I mean, even Moises Caicedo is not playing as a lone 6 at Chelsea. They're playing with a double pivot. And I think that Liverpool's long-term strategy is like, we want to play with a double pivot with a destroyer and a controller, or the old school, a destroyer and a playmaker, where they're looking for multifunctionality. And Ndidi's not multifunctional. Doucoure is multifunctional because he played as an 8, a progressive 8 at Lille. And Ryan Gravenberch's multifunctional because he can play as a 6, even though he's not a traditional winning number 6 that we would see as a Fabinho, and can play further forward as well. Again, I just think there's better players in the market and way better prices, and not on Premier League wages. You can go in and get someone probably on a similar or a lower wage and a higher ceiling. And, I just think that they're closer to hitting their peak, or not quite at their peak yet. They're going to the peak of their powers than Ndidi is.
Yeah. So I just brought up Paul's question. I think it's a good one to answer, and we can clarify that now. So Paul, just asking about the homegrown quota. I don't think that's actually an issue. The new rules. Go for it, Dan. Go for it.
So just to clarify, so for non-homegrown, so they would have to be 21 before January 1st, 2023. So someone who just turned 21 this year would not be counted against a non-homegrown. They would not be registered as a non-homegrown players. So those players include Pierre Hincapié, Ryan Gravenberch, and I do believe Gonzalo Ignacio, though I might be wrong on that. I think Ignacio would count against it. So Gravenberch does not count against it. Hincapié would not count against it. Doucoure would count against that. But if they wanted to sign 2 non-homegrown players, let's say a Doucoure and, just for argument's sake, Wilfred Ndidi, they would have to deregister a player to register him to play. And so they could register Adrian for 4 months and then re-register him in January.
Yeah, so it's the quote number of, so it's a 25-man squad. However, of that 25, you can only have a maximum of 17, I believe, as non-homegrown. And so we're up to 16, I believe. So you need to start thinking about if you're going to incorporate Ndidi, someone that is over that age, you need to free up another couple of spaces if you're thinking about bringing someone else in. So you got to think about, the winter window as well. So who we could actually bring in. Andre could be one, but he's I think he's younger than that, so he may qualify for that youth player that doesn't need to be registered as a non-homegrown. But don't see this is the thing, isn't it? With such a tight number of players available within the squad. We're not Chelsea. We're not going to have 33 players and looking to offload loads. We actually have the smallest squad in the league. Yeah. So everything now.
So just to clarify, Charlie, he is 22, so he would count against that. So
there you go.
If they did sign Gravenberch, he would not have to be registered for this season. However, if we did, we would still have one spot open. So if they did sign Andre in January, they would have to deregister a player. So that could be an Adrian, that could be a Matip, or a Simicast, or even a Thiago, for instance. If he has a long-term injury, they could deregister them from the team before the window closes. So this is something you have to do final registration before the window closes.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's an interesting one. One for me, I don't personally think is the right one for us. But what we'll do, we'll move on to the next topic. Before I do, just want to remind everyone, we're going to have extra time today. So please just save your questions for the end. When I do see some questions that I feel are going to be really, really good, I am saving them in our chat on this stream. So we'll go through those questions at the end in extra time. But yeah, just save your questions. We'll go through them in kind of quick fire round at the end of this stream. Before we do that, obviously, like, subscribe, do whatever you can for the channel. We are growing. We are trying to get more content for you. So please do so. Okay. Right. So the next topic it's an interesting one. And I think it's always going to be visible. It's something that we probably would have seen in terms of our desperation to try to get a central midfielder, defensive midfielder. We're linked with every Tom, Dick and Harry currently, aren't we? So suddenly today, a new link has come in. Palacios from Bayer Leverkusen. Some interesting stats about the player. I did save something here. So he's 24. He plays mainly as a centre mid, but has the ability to play as attacking in the number 10, but also as number 6 in that defensive midfield. Has actually got 25 caps for Argentina. So he's actually got some pedigree around him, being only 24. He's playing for the world champions. He probably did play in the World Cup. I forget if he was there. Someone, I'm sure in the comments can just confirm that for me. So, there is that link with McAllister. So, Brandon, I'll come to you first. Do you know much about him? I know the figure was quite high, considering, the type of player, the link that's just come out. Again, it's probably just one of those where we've just been linked with XYZ now. But what are your thoughts then, mate?
Yeah, I'm not going to act like I knew about him before today. It seems like a good player. I think he played in the semifinal in the World Cup. He didn't play in the final. I know he played in the semifinal. He seems like a hard worker. I know at one point in his personal life on Wikipedia, he was juggling 3 girlfriends at once. So I think he's a hard worker there.
Yeah. I saw that. That was something I was going to bring up. But then we can talk about it now, actually. I mean, the ability for a man to have that type of extracurricular activities going on while playing football, while representing Argentina, you got to say that's a pretty good standard.
Yeah, he's ambitious. He's
ambitious. That's it. That's very good.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not going to sit there and, like I said, I'm not going to act like I know much about his game. He seems like a pedigree player. Like, he is Argentinian. He's younger. He can play all across the midfield. We obviously have the link there with Xabi. So, I mean, that might be part of it as well. Like, is Xabi willing to do us a favor?
We just lost you. Brandon just lost you.
I'm sorry?
Oh, no, you got you back. Okay. You're back.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's part of it, just like with Xabi being in charge of Leverkusen. I don't know. What was the price quoted? I thought I saw something lower than I think what is actually quoted. Does anybody know off the top of their head?
I think it was like 50 million euros is what I had seen. And the report is like what they see him as, because they also don't have a lot of midfielders that kind of do that same position.
Yeah. Well, of course, my mouse stopped working, so shoot.
Oh no, I've just turned off my my headphones. I can hear you again. Dan, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You're good, Charlie. Yeah,
okay.
So the last thing I saw was like it was 50 million euros, because again, they don't really have like a lot of mids right now in that position. I think right now they're playing a midfield 2 of like Granit Xhaka and Ezekiel Palacios in many ways, and then Florian Wirtz is playing higher up, who can also play midfield, but is more of like a number 10 Carvalho style than like a box-to-box 8 or a midfield 2. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so because everyone stopped there for a second. So yeah, so no, I like just to Brandon. I mean, again, I think it's one of those things where the reason we're being linked to him is because the reports are us that we're looking at Piero Hincapié at Leverkusen. So they're just like, who's a midfielder at Leverkusen that Xabi Alonso might sell? It's like Palacios is one of them at the moment. Again, he's very injury prone. I think he's a decent player, but again, what's the point of buying him for our last non-homegrown spot if you're going to go get Andre Trindade from Fluminense? Like, I just think it's too samey. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. He's not really a development project. He's injury prone, and you would rather just take that spot for someone like an Andre above all else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting about his injury record. Though he's got that pedigree, though he has the ability to be representing Argentina at the very highest level, winning World Cups and whatnot. Maybe, something that we do need to consider. He is still playing at Bayer Leverkusen, with no disrespect to that club. They're a great club. They have history, don't they, with us, especially as well back in the day when they had Mikkel Ballack. In the Champions League, and they also have one of our favorite sons, Xabi Alonso, who that could be an interesting conversation in a couple of years. But yeah, with all due respect, no one else big has gone in for that player. He is 24. Maybe that next move is around the corner, but where would he be going? Those are the things you want to be considering.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like if it was, if we weren't in the situation we're in, I would gladly take him just because he would be a good squad player. But again, if you have one homegrown spot you need to do, and we already know that there are going to be problems we're trying to solve this transfer window and next transfer window, you might as well keep the spot open and get somebody else.
Brandon, I know we got cut off there, but any additional thoughts about this particular player for you?
Yeah, I actually thought he was younger than he is. He's 24. I thought he was like 22, 21. So, I mean, it's like he probably is at his ceiling. He's injury prone. Just like Dan said, like there's just better options for us. If we're just going to use that spot, it just doesn't make sense to use that spot on him. So,
yeah. Again, probably one that hasn't got much legs. I know there's going to be obviously the Jurg link to German clubs, but we haven't really seen it. I know we got Endo from Stuttgart for a decent
Soboslai. And
Soboslai, yeah, obviously, yeah. So whether Jurg is looking at the German market to try to bolster the squad in one last attempt before the window closes this week, it's going to be interesting to see. But we'll move on to the next link that's come out again. Another one that's come out today. Last week was Kamara. From Aston Villa, and today actually is another Aston Villa player that's been linked, Douglas Luiz, who again has kind of caused a little bit of commotion in the chat. But I'll let you guys can cover that off. But Dan, what are your thoughts about the 25-year-old centre midfielder who's rated at 40 million?
So, I mean, I like Douglas Luiz. I actually thought that City would have brought him back from Villa as like their backup to Fernandinho, but they ended up going with Rodri, and that decision seems to have paid off loads. I think, putting it very lightly. I like Andre as a player. I just don't think he really. Again, it comes down to like options. He's going to take your last homegrown spot. I think he's been linked with us for the past 2 seasons. There was even rumors of us going for him last year instead of Arthur as like one of the options. I like him. He's a good player. I think he would, I think one of the best attacks in Europe, if not the league. I think we have the best attack in the Premier League by far, and definitely probably the deepest in Europe. Is that he would come in and we would still be good. But I just think if you're going to use that last homegrown spot, why not go out and try to get someone that, is going to be more reliable, maybe a little bit more physical, maybe someone that's a bit more of a project, that you can do a lot more things off the chart statistically than Douglas Luiz is. Like if you're spending 40 million on Douglas Luiz, that's your last homegrown spot. Not really a great buy, is it, as well? Like you'd rather spend that money on a Doucouré, on a Gravenberch, on an Andre Trindade, or even a Piero Hincapié, in many ways. Again, that's kind of really what it comes down to when it comes to these players. And I know that people say options are short, but just because you have bad options doesn't mean you have to. Just because you're able to options doesn't mean you have to take anybody. Like you can still be picky with the players that you really, really want to get. You don't want to burden yourself with, an Ozan Kabak or a Ben Davies or even Arthur Melo. Like, you don't want to carry anybody for this season, especially with going to a title. You want someone that if you're going to buy them and spend the money and pay the wages, they're going to come in and do a job at least for a year, like in the case of Wataru Endo.
Yeah. So I think the point for me is, and just before we move on to the point just for you there, Brandon, but 60 likes, 3 reviews, really, really good number so far. Let's try to get to 100. It really, really helps. But the point I wanted to bring there, Brandon, was he's a player that plays for Aston Villa. Aston Villa are a really good side. We are playing them on this weekend. They have had a fantastic week where they've scored over, loads of goals in Europe, at home, in the cups, whatever. They're scoring for fun. So why would a player who is playing week in, week out want to leave? A really, really good setup at Aston Villa, because they're on the crescendo. They're going on a high. Emery's got them playing really well.
They're in Europe, aren't they, Charlie? Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. So
they played Hibs and won 5. With all respect to Hibs, but they won 5-0 away. Which that's a really good result. Kind of cements them in that European competition. So yeah, why would Douglas Luiz or any kind of Aston Villa player that is playing week in, week out want to leave that club to join Liverpool, where they may not get the game time that they think, and especially that they want to be playing for Brazil, don't they?
Yeah, because it's Liverpool. That's ultimately kind of like the goal. Anytime those Caicedo was wanting to leave back in January, even though Brighton's having this great season, it's because these teams that are huge to him growing up want him. It's like when N'Golo Kante left Leicester to go to Chelsea after Leicester just won the title, was in Champions League, and Chelsea was not. It's because these top clubs carry a weight in the player's mind no matter what. So as great as Aston Villa has been and how great job Emery has done, ultimately it's playing for Klopp. It's playing at Anfield. It's playing for all the titles, every 6-time Champions League Champions League winners. It's all that is the reason why somebody would leave a great situation to come to what they believe would be a better situation for them. And also playing at Liverpool kind of would add to that Brazilian thing of if he wants to be in the national team, playing at Liverpool probably increases his odds, because I've seen players, especially over here in America, when they play in MLS and they're sitting there doing great, can't get a sniff at their national team because they're not playing for a top club.
Yeah, and just look at the past 2 games we've had. Who would not want to come play for Liverpool? You literally have players like Cody Gakpo saying we're in the league. Dominic Silva's before the Newcastle game was I'm here, we can win the league. The players' mindset this year is not we'll see what they do at the end of the year. No, we can win the league. We're all good. This is how, regardless of our speculation, if the players look at each other and say, "You're boss, you're really good," they know what's up. When you're at such a professional, high level, when someone has it, when someone doesn't. They're looking at each other oh, we can win the league here. We're good enough to do that. And we have not won a game this year with 11 players on the field. That's mad. We played 3 games. We've won 2. We have 7 points. Great start to the season. We have not won with 11 players on the pitch. If you are looking at this Liverpool project and you're not for me, then you don't love football and we don't want you, because anybody would be knocking down doors to get here. From Liverpool's perspective, it really comes down to who can solve as many problems as we can get for the money we have. That's why the whole thing has been multifunctional. It's not because it's we don't want any defensive mids. It's more we need someone who can do a lot of different roles.
Yeah, and there's been a couple of comments about his contract situation. Now, I understood that Douglas signed a new contract last year in 2022.
He did.
Was that actually a long-term or just a 1-year extension?
I think it was an extension with a pay rise, a significant pay rise was the big thing.
So it may be interesting to see, and if it is true that his contract is running out at the end of this season, so summer 2024, that price will plummet. It doesn't need to be necessarily now. It could be January if we are looking, shore up with a couple of players. Who knows? It could be Douglas Luiz. With his experience in the Premier League, it's something that we are always looking for. But then he could partner Andre. So him coming in, they could, hit it off. We get that Brazilian flair back in midfield. Something that we do miss, with Fabinho. I know he's gone now, but it's going to be interesting to see what we can do with that type of player if that link is true. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next topic. And this is actually a transfer out rather than transfer into Liverpool. Something that has come up. I'm not surprised with the quality of the player that we're talking about. So Joe Gomez has today been linked with two moves. One to join Saudi Arabian team Al-Ittihad, and then the other is Premier League side West Ham. Now, I'll ask very quickly both of you if you think that Al-Ittihad link is worth discussing. I don't personally think so. We can move on to West Ham. That's more credible. But a sheer, kind of visual that I can see that you're shaking your head. You don't believe there's actually a worthwhile link. It is a strange one. It's not something I believe that Joe would ever consider, considering that he still has probably ambitions to play for England. Wants to play at the very highest level, prove that he is, still the same old Joe Gomez pre-injury, all the injuries that he has had. But Brandon, what are your thoughts very quickly about the Al-Ittihad link?
Just no.
It's just paper talk, right?
Just complete paper talk. It's anybody with kind of a name who's done a job. It seems like also they want to focus on Liverpool players going to Saudi much more than almost everybody else. But yeah, it's just it's a non-starter. It's not even something really to think about.
And Dan, what are your thoughts there, mate?
Same. I just think it's also one of those things where obviously Al-Ittihad won't Mohamed Salah, so it's just one of the things where we're just looking at another player because it's just easy. It's paper talk. It's get a piece of letterhead type of a Liverpool player. And yes, he is 26. And also again, it doesn't make sense selling Joe Gomez, especially right now. Like even this year, it didn't make sense. But unless you were talking about to Newcastle earlier in the summer window, and you were going to sign, let me just say, a Levi Colwell, someone who's going to come in and replace him. But we're already discussing homegrown and the limitations of that, of who Liverpool can buy and should buy. So you would just create more problems for yourself. It makes no sense, especially with the fact that we know that Ibrahima Konate can pick up a muscle injury here and there. And that Liverpool don't want to rush Konate if they don't have to. They don't want to cause a long-term hamstring problem like De Bruyne now has at City. So, Gomez's only issue has just been his injuries, which have not always been his fault. I think it should be said, he had a ligament issue, he had a leg break. This is not someone whose lack of fitness is down to him just being muscle injuries. It has been mostly down to these long-term impact injuries that have harmed him over the years. So it doesn't make sense for Joe as a player to go to somewhere like West Ham or even Saudi Arabia, because it's he probably does want to play for England. England don't have that many great center backs at the moment, though they do have obviously Colwell, who's very talented coming up. So as long as he can stay healthy, he can be in this first team and be 2019, 2020 Gomez, 2018, 2019 Joe Gomez, and he can get back into this England team for Euros. And when are the Euros? 2024, so next year, if I remember correctly, or am I? Yeah, so he can get back in for the Euros team.
Yeah, and Jay, you've just mentioned a really good point. It looks like Konate is going to be out until the end of the international break, which then kind of leads into again that second fixture where Virgil's going to be out potentially. So that's Wolves away. Those are the things that we need to kind of try to consider, don't we? One thing I will say, and I'll ask you, Brandon. Jurgen Klopp has shown previously that if players feel that they want to move on, achieve more, or do more, at other clubs, he's got a history where he is willing to let players go. Do you think the player, if he chose that he wants to leave, Jurgen will reluctantly accept that position, or would he actually say, no, you're going to be playing, Konate's out, Virgil's out, etc., etc.? What are your thoughts on that one?
Yep, I would hope that be Klopp stands no, you just can't leave the team. You've been a part of for almost 10 years now. You can't leave us this high and dry. We just let Billy. I always call him Billy K. We just let him go out on loan.
Yeah,
he's at a League 2 side.
Yeah, and then obviously we're still trying to get rid of Nat Phillips for the fifth straight season, and so I mean we're trying to get more players off the books. Joe's is not part of that plan. I'd hope Jurgen put his foot down and say, no, I'm sorry, you can't go. Maybe in the winter transfer when we can work something else out. But right now it's just it's impossible to let Joe go. It's just completely just.
It's self-destructive, isn't it? But the sheer fact that we've lost so many midfielders, if we then suddenly decide that we want to weaken our defense, it would put the.
And we're already considered back anyway, so it's like, why would we have one of those guys that we're going to depend on for 30 plus games this year, more than likely? Like, why would let him walk out the door, like right at the very end when there's no time to bring anybody, especially or there's time, but not for anybody that we really want to build with.
I think there would be more legs in this if we didn't just have the weekend we had. If Konate didn't have an injury, if Van Dijk didn't have that sent off and possibly extended ban, I feel like there could potentially be more legs in it. But time window. And honestly, I don't think Joe wants to go. Like anywhere after this is a step down, unless you're going to Barcelona or Madrid. And even still, going to Barcelona, Madrid is not a guarantee of success. Madrid fans used to boo Ronaldo, so it's not always a step up in terms of going to these other clubs. So I think Joe's knows what situation he's in. He has the best chance not only of his career, but getting into the England squad to stay at Liverpool. And I think there's absolutely no legs in any of these movements.
And also, we're not just talking about centre back position, are we? With Joe, he's got the capabilities, proven in the past that he can play along the back four. He can certainly cover Trent very, very well. We've seen him last season, coming up with a couple of assists, really, really good crosses for strikers to score. Really good defensively, really, really strong, really, really quick. Just the only thing that kind of holds him back sometimes is the concentration. You think back at the Leeds game last season where there was a really poor back pass to Alisson, and I think it was Rodrigo scored for Leeds. I don't know how I've just plugged that out, considering what's going on. But yeah, it's in there. I've got it. But yeah, that's the only thing that holds Joe back. I'd probably say, and this is just a personal opinion, Joe probably is as equal to Konate in terms of ability. The thing that gets Joe is the mentality side of things. I don't know what you guys think.
I agree, but I think that mentality usually comes to the fact that when he doesn't get a run of games, he's just it's just one of those things where it's when you don't have that run of games, that run of form, it's very easy to make mistakes, rather than he has lapses in concentration. Honestly, the worst game I've seen Joe Gomez play was that Napoli 4-0. Now, granted, I think that needs context. The fact that Napoli were probably the best side in Europe last year before they got injured. You're talking about one of the best attacks. Jesus Christ, that Napoli side was good when we played them. So I think there's also context, and I think someone mentioned the Madrid game too. That's fine, but again, you're talking about Real Madrid with Vinicius, one of the best young players coming up right now, with Karim Benzema as well. And it's Real Madrid. They're always going to be a challenge in many ways. So I completely agree with you on the ability side. I just think it's if he gets a run in games, I think we would see him be perfectly fine mentally speaking. Cool.
Right, we'll close off on that one. I don't think there's much heed in that conversation with Gomez. I don't think he'll be leaving. I think he's too good of a player. So we'll finish the topics that we had. We're going to come to the last one for tonight. We're going to be talking about a particular player that has been linked for a number of weeks now, Cheick Doucoure, and there's some little bit of interesting news as well around the player tonight. So there's been reports that contracts have been sent over, etc., etc. But the most important thing is that Crystal Palace are playing tonight, and Cheick Doucoure isn't in the squad at all, as far as I know. So is that an interesting turn of events? So not to cup tie player. Brandon, any thoughts about that initial news around him not playing for Crystal Palace tonight?
Yeah, it gets the butterflies going in the stomach. Maybe this is actually happening. It's definitely interesting. It's definitely something to maybe read too much into at the same time, but it definitely is something to definitely keep the eye on. Obviously, of all the players that we've been linked to over the summer, it seems like the Doucoure one is the one who never seems to completely fade away. We've seen Thuram and Kone from Germany or France and Germany kind of go up and down. They'll be really hot, then all of a sudden a whole week of not talking about them. Whereas Doucoure seems to constantly be on the Liverpool mind. So the fact he's not playing tonight, not even on the bench, seems at least, fingers crossed, promising news.
And just misfit Malloy, we don't appreciate any of that slander here. Appreciate you being here, but you can take that Chelsea talk out. We don't like it.
Yeah, that's how it works. We announced an agreement with the player and the club. Chelsea come in, offer double the wages on a 20-year contract to amortize it, and then it's just like he goes to Chelsea. It's like, oh well, what can you do?
Yeah. I think it is interesting. It does seem like there's a bit of legs behind it. There's probably going to be that one last transfer. Cheick is that type of player. He probably isn't a bona fide number 6. Someone that's actually going to sit back and anchor. The midfield is more kind of a explorer. Will destroy attacks a little bit further up. Someone that. That's just been mentioned. Amrabat is your kind of very, very much a bona fide number 6, sits in front of a back 4 and will, tackle and then distribute the ball. Whereas from what I've seen, and I think he's a really good player, is Doucouré will do what other players will do, is kind of search for the ball, destroy those attacks a little bit further up and run with the ball itself.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how you see him. Like Vieira very much used Doucouré like that as a 6 last year because he didn't play. He played Cheick Doucouré as a center back, and he played Doucouré as the deepest midfielder. Roy Hodgson's gone back to this Kouyaté as the defensive mid, the traditional tall destroyer of defensive man, and playing Cheick Doucouré much forward. I listen, I remember everyone just losing their minds when they said like Liverpool not looking for a specialist 6, which I read that as okay, they're going for a multifunctional player. That's really what Cheick Doucouré is. That's what Ryan Gravenberch is. They're going to probably look for someone that can play as a 2, as a 3, as a in a flat back 4. Someone who can do a lot of jobs. I think Cheick Doucouré has always for me. I think Cheick Doucouré is a perfectly good player. If you can sign him, sign him. If you are willing to spend 70 million on him, spend 7 million on him. I think the Doucouré story is really tied to who else they're going to try and buy if they try to buy someone. Because I think they're also trying to do Gravenberch. So it really comes down to can you get Doucouré and Gravenberch because you can sign both players, but you're not going to sign Andre in January in that instance because it's for me if you're signing Doucouré, you're not signing Andre. You're not going to sign insert someone who takes a non-homegrown quota, and he also has AFCON. So you are committing to Cheick Doucouré for a long term. And I think there is a world where you buy Cheick Doucouré and you can play him. Would he walk into a best 11? Not right now, I don't think so, because Indo's been here. So I think they'll keep Indo in until Doucouré could play his way into the team for the most part. But if you're buying Cheick Doucouré, you're committing to Cheick Doucouré for the next 3 to 4 years. And that's my one trepidation. It's not even the fact that he's 70 million. It's that do they want Doucouré for 3 to 4 years? I think he's a good player. I think he would make the team better. I don't think he makes the first 11 better, but I think he makes the 25-man squad better because it allows other players to come in as well. But it just really comes down to do they think he's that type of player? And on the contract side, it is this is not news. This happens all the time where personal terms are agreed before an official bid comes in. So honestly, it's just more of a wait and see. I think Doucouré is part of a string of other transfers that Liverpool are trying to do at the same time. And it really just comes down to can they get the bid in, the structure in, the contract in they want, and get it all submitted obviously before Friday and all the paperwork process before 3 a.m.
Yeah. So I think with Doucouré, I think he's a really, really good, interesting player. I think the capabilities and the ceiling that he has been masked by the fact that he plays for Crystal Palace. With all due respect, I really like Palace and the players that they do have, but they play Hodgson ball. They don't play under someone like Brighton's manager Zebri and whatnot. But the way that he's come in and been player of the year for that team where they have Eze and Olise and stuff like really, really good players already established. He's come in his first season and he's won player of the season for them. He was, his previous club, I think it was Rennes, and he was Lens, wasn't it? I think it was Long. And he was really, really good player at that point. So I think coming into a Liverpool team that would suit him more, where he's going to have better players around him, have a better coaching system, I think he has that ability to actually develop as a player. Just quickly, Brandon, your thoughts? Do you kind of agree with that? Do you think actually he would make it into the first team straight away, or would there be kind of a bit of a bedding in period?
I think there'd be a bedding in period. Like with almost every Klopp player, it seems like there has to be a little bit of a bedding in period to get used to the intensity and the style. He's still young. He's 23. Obviously, as you said, playing Hodgson ball to go into play Klopp ball would be quite a different ask for a player and what his abilities are. Like, you're asking a completely different style of what you need him to do. So I think there would be a bedding in period. I like Doucouré. He wouldn't have been my first choice all summer, but I mean, I would definitely be happy if that's the business we get done at the end.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say if you're going to buy Cheick Doucoure, you're not buying Ryan Gravenberch. And I know someone said we need both Andre and Doucoure. Listen, I think they're both great players. It's just the non-homegrown thing. Like, you would have to deregister a player because Doucoure would take up a not homegrown spot. So if you're committing to Doucoure, I don't think you're going to get Gravenberch, and I don't think you're getting Andre. I think you're committing to Doucoure, and then they're going to move for a center back. I think that would be our last defensive signing, kind of similar to Caicedo.
Okay. Yeah, so interestingly. So what we'll do, we'll close on that. We're actually going to go into extra time, and we'll move straight into the Gravenberch topic. But before I do, just to kind of remind everyone, we're going to open up the chat essentially and ask you guys to give us the questions that you think you want to get answered. There's a few questions already that have come in. Please just throw these questions out, and we'll answer as many as we can over the next 10 minutes before we close up. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is Gravenberch. So very, very quickly. So let me just show the question. So what about this Gravenberch? We've got another one about Gravenberch. So one thing I'm just going to throw out to you there, because it's not really particularly a question, but if we were to get Doucouré, we buy Doucouré. However, would you be more inclined, and this is taking in consideration his age, that we get a loan with an option to buy at the end of this season? Would that actually make it a better deal to get those two players in essentially for the price of one?
You're talking about for Gravenberch, loan with an obligation to buy?
Yeah, so we would buy Doucouré, and then we loan in Gravenberch with that option to buy for the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with it. I just don't remember the last time we've done that, except for our tour, which was not an obligation, was an option. The same thing with Ozan Kabak, where Michael Edwards negotiated hard to make sure we didn't have to buy him. Listen, I'm okay with that because I like Ryan Gravenberch. I've defended Ryan Gravenberch. I've had to get deep arguments with people about tactics and shape about why I think Ryan Gravenberch makes a lot of sense as a midfield buy. I would not be against it. I just think that, again, that signals to me you're not buying Andre. You're off the Andre train, and Andre's not going to come in January. Which, again, I'm fine with if Klopp and Pep and Schmatka and Barry Hunter and all the guys who are at Liverpool Football Club, who are, it should be said, and I hate to remind people of this, are smarter than me and most people when it comes to football, and they've been around football for a long time. If they think that this is the right move, I'm perfectly for it, because I think you can sell Liverpool to Gravenberch, saying this is how many games we see you playing, this is what we're going to see you do, and as long as you give him that pathway, I think Gravenberch would come, and I think he'd be a great player for us. Anyway, not gets homegrown too.
Yeah. So before we get on to the next question, I just want to bring up this comment now. Monkey Chops, I understand your possibly a little bit of frustrations as to what we're talking about. First of all, we are a fan channel. We're not paid to be here. We're doing this out of the love of being in love with Liverpool Football Club. I understand maybe we may not know all aspects of the players that we're linked with, but you got to consider the amount of links that there are. There are other players that are linked with us on a daily basis. We're trying to bring a fan perspective in regards to what we try to do as a club itself. So yeah, I understand it may be a little bit frustrating, and sometimes we don't have the knowledge around all players, but all we can do is try to do the best that we can. We try to be educated as much as we can, but yeah, we respect your comment, but try to be understanding of where we come from as a channel itself.
Plus, I'm insulted. I do a lot of research. I write notes for everything. Like, I take this very seriously, man. Like, he's like a lack of ball knowledge. Like, I feel personally insulted. We have to have a ball knowledge off Monkey Chops. We can go at it one day.
Okay. No, thanks, Dan. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. Helia, always great to see you, mate. Thank you for joining the channel as always. So this is a really, really interesting one. So Brandon, I'm going to open this one for you. So there's essentially 2 days left of Jörg Schmack's contract with Liverpool. Should we extend?
No, I don't think so. I think
basis of what?
I feel like we've been taking way too much time to figure out something we've known we've needed for, well, I guess we haven't figured out. Once the Fabinho stuff kind of happened and obviously the Hendo stuff happened, it feels like we've just been kind of scrambling with no clear ideas. Like, at least that's how I feel towards it. Like, it seems like we're in for everybody, but we can't get anything over the line. We feel like we're spinning wheels all the time. And we're down to like 2 days left. I don't know. And I feel like it was always just going to be a short-term deal for Schmadtke anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a really strong feeling in the group in what we've seen today. So I guess, Dan, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with the comments? Do you agree with Brandon what he's come out with today? And York probably should be leaving. Maybe not tonight, but by the end of this window itself.
I think there's an argument for that. Not everything that happened, this is not me defending Jörg Schmacker, but I feel like we need to remember that not everything that happened this summer is Jörg Schmacker's fault. Like the job he came in at May when they announced him versus the job now is vastly different. A lot of things changed in a quick amount of time. Now, granted, those things changed because he and Jurgen made decisions, so they do have to cop for that as well. I don't want to sit here and turn this into a Jörg Schmacker hagiography session. I am not against Jörg staying on for at least January, in case there is business to be done, especially if they have to, again, like I said, sign Andre or sign a player. I think the best thing that Liverpool can do is just let him run out his contract till May and then plan the succession. I just don't want them to sack Jörg and have no one to replace him, is my point. Like, don't let someone go unless you have a plan to replace them. Like, the plan for Jörg was always for him to be temporary. So just keep him temporary and let him fulfill his contract. It gives you time to replace the sporting director behind him, because I don't want them to sack him if they're not going to have a sporting director who's going to stay for the next, let's say, 8 years. Because we know Klopp's leaving 2026. You need a sporting director who's going to come in, not just work with Klopp, but is going to be intimately in with the process of hiring the next manager of Liverpool Football Club. And I think that has to be the mindset. If we have to swallow Jörg for another year, doing Jörg things, throwing 200 million bids in for Kylian Mbappe, I'll live for the drama if it means that long term we can get a sporting director in who is going to help shape the next phase of Liverpool.
Great. Yeah, good answers there, guys. I think that kind of resonates with the guys that were on the comments today. So Tuckles, thank you for your contribution to the channel. It really, really helps. So there's an interesting conversation that's come in here around a choice of players here. So we've got Hincapié, I think that's how you pronounce it, and then a choice of either Gravenberch and Thuram. So they're affordable, fit the FSG Moneyball system. Doucouré is a little bit slow, won't fit the press, and close to his ceiling, in his opinion. So what he says there is Gravenberch, McAllister, Endo can share the central defensive midfielder responsibilities. Any thoughts? I'll throw it out to whoever wants to take it first.
Brandon, I'll let you go first, man, because I know I've been hitting on this, and I'll make my point real quick after you go.
Yeah. I think the key with Thuram, the whole holdup is that he wants a huge wage increase to he's going to be making way more than Robertson would. So, I mean, I think that's the big hiccup for Thuram. I love Thuram. I would love to have Thuram at Liverpool, but I think that's the hiccup. So, yeah, it might be affordable transfer fee, but then you start looking at everything else in terms of locker room stability. Like if, we have a guy who hasn't proven himself at this level making more than Andy Robertson, who's proven himself to be the best left back in the world for years and years and years, you can start having some issues in the locker room, or players start demanding more wages. We're having more contract issues, and we have an unhappy locker room. Especially when I feel like the league is so wide open that, if we have a harmonious locker room, we could really push forward to the top of the table, even without a true number 6. I don't know enough about Leverkusen to say anything about Hincapié. Where's that comment? There it is. Yeah, Gravenberch, I'd be happy with. I mean, I know we talked about a little bit earlier. I said Doucouré would be great. I would prefer Gravenberch. I just feel like there's a little bit more versatility in his game, more of a ceiling as well. A little bit younger. I do kind of agree that Doucouré is what he is, but I still feel like that's a good level for this team. I don't think we've really brought in Mac to play a central defensive midfielder, though. So I don't think that's a great idea. So
Okay.
And
Yeah,
just
go for it, Dan.
real quick. Yeah, I was gonna say, so Hincapié would be great because he's pretty much, he profiles similar to Guardiola and Gonzalo Ignacio in terms of his build-up play, though he is short and his defensive actions and headers aren't really great. So if I like Hincapié, I think he's a decent player for this system, but it really comes down to, do you want to commit to this 3-box-3 going forward? And I'm not sure they want to. So even though I think Hincapié is a good player, I think they might end up signing someone out of the blue. It's a little bit different. In terms of Gravenberch or Thuram, I was on the Thuram train. I think he's a great player. My issue with Thuram, or I think Liverpool's issue with Thuram, is that they want players who are progressive passers, not progressive carriers, or rather players that can do both. So if you look at Dominic Szoboszlai, Alexis McAllister, Wataru Endo, these guys are progressive passers of the ball, not progressive carriers. And I think that's the profile play they want, is someone who can do progressive passing very well, and then allow carrying to be kind of like the ancillary or auxiliary trait that they bring. So I think that that's why they went off Thuram, is because they were like, we want someone who can progressive pass the ball rather than progressive carry very quickly. And they're moving to, I think they're going to move to a midfield 2 instead of a midfield 3 long term.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I'm going to retract Jay's last question, talking about conspiracy theories, but Jay's thrown in a very good question. A couple of Szoboszlai questions have come in. So he's asked there, early EPL signing of the year, Szoboszlai. Any thoughts? Brandon, you want to go in and then we'll finish with you there, Dan?
100% yes. 100% yes. Sobo is perfect. He is perfect. Like, he could start scoring own goals and he'd make it look good. So, I mean, he's about as perfect as it could be in my eyes so far. So,
and Dan?
I agreed. And I mean, I just want to humor Jay Muse because I know he's in here a lot and I want to respect them for all of their time. Yes, I do believe it was real. I don't believe it was fake, regardless of what an ex-Liverpool player says. And I can give you a whole dissertation with evidence and citations to justify that. Listen, I've written those for players, but I think it was real. I think the only reason we think it wasn't real is because we didn't get him in the end, for the most part. And obviously people are frustrated with the ownership group, which everyone's always going to be frustrated with the ownership group when we've had the summer we've had. I mean, look at United. United are a mess, and so they go from Glazers in to Glazers out in like every 5 seconds. So and listen, Arsenal is selling players right now too. So we can have our deep dive discussion on FSG and transfer policy and structure some other time. And how Casado fits into that. I just don't. I think it was real, and we can discuss that more in another stream if you want to, Charlie.
Yeah, probably. We'll get you back for that one, mate. Okay. I'll bring up the previous comment just back. I just want to make sure, we're so close to 100 likes for tonight. It's really, really good. I know it's a Tuesday night, not the most exciting of evenings for everyone. There's a little bit of football going on, so it's really, really good that we are getting really, really good numbers. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you really quickly. So we're just going to rattle off the last kind of 3-4 questions. Madison or Szoboszlai for people? I know there's going to be rose-tinted glasses here, but Brandon, what do you think? Would you take Madison or Szoboszlai right now?
Szoboszlai. His ceiling is so much higher. I was never that big on Madison. He's played very well for Tottenham, though, which is he's been way better for Tottenham than I ever thought he could be, just after a few games. But I've never been that high on him. But Sobos he's going to do for us what like KDB does for Manchester City. He's going to be that type of this transformative type of midfielder who just can win games by himself with his delivery and just his play in general.
Yeah, I agree. The ceiling's absolutely super, super high for that player. I've been really, really impressed with everything that he's doing for the club. Just going forward, going back, he's just running himself into the ground. You saw that on the weekend. He looked like a spent force, but he did everything that he needed to. Covered every single piece of grass in St. James's Park. So great. Dan, what are your thoughts?
So obviously I agree with Szoboszlai, but I do want to kind of answer 2 questions in one. I think Madison's a very smart buy for Tottenham Hotspur for Ange Postecoglou's system. Someone asked, I believe it was Paul, asked this earlier, and I kept it in my mind. Did we miss the boat on Bend at the end? It's going to be hard to tell because Tottenham have not played a good side yet. They played Brentford away and they played Bournemouth. They played Brentford at home. No, it wasn't Brentford away. They played Bournemouth I forgot already. But anyways, Tottenham have not played a good team so far, so we haven't seen Postecoglou system put under pressure by a Liverpool, a City, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Newcastle. You know, a team that's going to have a more dynamic attack. So I like Mickey Van de Ven. I think the reason they didn't go for him is something we'll see later on. It just reminds me so much of the Christian Romero signing that Tottenham made a couple years ago, where everyone's like, why didn't we sign Romero? And then we see why we didn't sign Romero, because he's kind of just Lovren 2.0, but Argentinian form. But I think Maddison was a smart buy, but Szoboszlai's different gravy. Let's be honest. But if I was Tottenham, I'd be very happy with Maddison, because he's essentially a lighter version of Szoboszlai.
Yeah, really good question there. Thank you, Tony. We'll move on to the next one. Dan, if you want to go straight into this one, random question: who should take our next penalty? Maka, Szoboszlai, or Salah?
Salah until Klopp gets frustrated with them, and then after that it'll be Szoboszlai, I believe. But it should be Salah still, because he's still the highest paid. He's on the leadership committee. Klopp obviously keeps him on pants, so it should be Salah until otherwise, until they get fed up with him.
Yeah. And Brandon, what are your thoughts about that question, mate?
I think it should be Sobo, but it's going to be Salah, but it should be Sobo in my opinion. I mean, I think it's 3 straight misses for Mo. It's just you sit him down and say, "Hey,
great numbers." Yeah, not great numbers.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, rattle off 100 straight in practice, and we'll put you back on them or something like that. Or I don't know, just no. But I think it should be Sobo, but it's going to be Salah.
Okay, so we are coming up to an hour and 10 minutes. We'll probably answer one more question, and then we'll close it up for tonight. I really enjoyed tonight's stream, having the extra time. Hopefully, you guys have also. If you guys like it, please just leave a comment. If you like this extra time, we'll do it again. I'll try to make it a regular feature for you guys to get more involved, and we'll do this more often. Okay, so last question. This is a funny one. Who pays 35 million for McTominay?
Bayern Munich. They need players. And no, I mean, seriously, I know all of us are really anxious about this transfer window, but there are a lot of teams out there that are still doing business. This is not a transfer window in the past where it's been kind of dead and there hasn't been a lot of business. Bayern Munich need players. Arsenal are selling players and they have an injury crisis. United need players because they're under injury crisis and they're trying to sell players as well. So I think Bayern Munich pay 35 million for Scott McTominay. I could see that happening.
Brandon? Would you pay 35 million for Scott McTominay?
Oh yeah, if I was in charge of any of the rivals, I would definitely pay 35 million. I would waste that money in a heartbeat for Scott McTominay, who I don't think is the worst player, but he's...
You know what though? If I was Palace and I was getting Wilfred Ndidi, I'd buy Scott McTominay. He would come in and be like the best midfielder in that team. And I don't mean that as an insult to Scott McTominay. I think he's a decent player. I just think that he has I think his level is like mid-table Premier League, and there's nothing more mid-table Premier League than Crystal Palace.
Yeah, but like if he's going like Bayern Munich or something like that, that's not the move for somebody like McTominay. But Palace, he'd be great for. I mean, if he could make obviously 35 million, he's not going to like Celtic, but I mean, that'd be like another great club for him to like really thrive at. But yeah, if somebody's spending 35 million and somebody who's got a big influx of cash, maybe it is Crystal Palace if we end up going forward with Doucouré.
Okay, right. We're gonna leave it on that one then, Reds. I really have enjoyed tonight. I think it's been really fantastic. Dan, good luck with your classes. Lecturing. Sticking it to the kids and doing whatever you need to do. And Brandon, good luck with the new job. You're always welcome on a Tuesday night with me. Have the best time. Enjoy. Just reach out to us anyway. But what I want to just say to all you guys, just wanted to say thank you for joining us. I think it's been a really good stream. Join us tomorrow. We are back 7:30. We've got some more content. I've got a video about 3 key decisions that Klopp needs to make before the Villa game. I've done that, so that's been edited. And then what else have we got? We've got the possibly Europa League reaction draw stream that's going to be there. We're going to do a post-match reaction show. You can see that we're just throwing out loads of content. And again, just want to say last comment and then we'll close up. Tuckles, thank you again. I'm pleased that you like what we've done today. We try to be level-headed. And just to close it off, you will not walk alone. Thank you. Good night, all Reds. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.